Introduction. The lifeline of America. For nearly a century, Social Security has served as the backbone of economic security for millions of Americans. But how did it all begin? How has it evolved? And most importantly, what does the future hold for one of the most significant social programs in American history? In this documentary, we will take a deep dive into the complete history of Social Security. From its origins in the depths of the Great Depression to the challenges of the modern era, we will explore the impact it has had on generations of Americans. We will examine how Social Security was born out of necessity, how it expanded to cover retirees, the disabled, and survivors, and the ongoing debate about its future. We'll uncover the reforms, the political battles, and the financial challenges that have shaped this program for nearly a century. By the end of this documentary, you will have a full understanding of the Social Security system, its history, its impact, and its uncertain future. Let's begin our journey. Life before Social Security, pre-1935. Before Social Security, there was no national safety net for the elderly, the disabled, or survivors of deceased workers. If you could no longer work, your only options were to rely on savings, family support, or charity. But for most Americans, these options weren't enough. At the turn of the 20th century, life expectancy was much lower, and financial security in old age was a privilege reserved for the wealthy. The few pensions that existed were offered by select industries, primarily the railroad sector and some government agencies. However, these pensions were unreliable, often mismanaged, and in many cases non-existent for the vast majority of workers. By the 1920s, it became clear that the existing system was failing millions of Americans. Poverty among the elderly was widespread. The country needed a new solution. The Great Depression and the birth of Social Security, 1929 to 1935. Then came the Great Depression. The stock market crash of 1929 wiped out savings overnight. Banks failed, businesses collapsed, and unemployment soared. For older Americans, the economic devastation was catastrophic. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, elected in 1932, knew that drastic action was needed. As part of his New Deal reforms, Roosevelt formed the Committee on Economic Security in 1934, tasking them with developing a long-term plan for social insurance. 1 year later, on August 14, 1935, the Social Security Act was signed into law. It was a revolutionary program. For the first time, the federal government guaranteed a financial safety net for retirees. Social Security was funded through payroll taxes, meaning workers would contribute throughout their careers and receive benefits upon retirement. However, the program was far from perfect. At first, Social Security only covered retirees. It did not yet include disability benefits or survivor benefits. It also excluded millions of workers, particularly agricultural and domestic workers, which disproportionately affected Black and Latino Americans. But it was a start. And from that moment, Social Security would continue to evolve. Expanding the system, 1940 to 1965. As the years passed, it became clear that Social Security needed to grow. The 1940s and 1950s saw major expansions to the program. During World War II, millions of Americans entered the workforce, dramatically increasing payroll tax revenue. This allowed Social Security to become more financially stable and expand its reach. By 1950, Congress had passed amendments extending benefits to widows, orphans, and disabled workers. Then, in 1965, one of the biggest expansions in Social Security history took place, the creation of Medicare and Medicaid. President Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society reforms introduced government-funded health care for seniors and low-income individuals. For the first time, Social Security wasn't just about financial security, it was about health care security as well. The crisis years. Social Security faces its first financial problems, 1970 to 1983. By the 1970s, Social Security faced a new challenge: inflation. As the cost of living skyrocketed, Social Security benefits were losing their value. To address this, Congress introduced automatic cost of living adjustments, or COLAs, ensuring that Social Security payments would increase in response to inflation. But this wasn't enough. By the early 1980s, Social Security was running out of money. Without major reforms, the system was at risk of collapsing. In 1983, a bipartisan agreement was reached. President Ronald Reagan signed into law major reforms that increased payroll taxes and gradually raised the retirement age from 65 to 67. This saved Social Security for the time being. Modern-day challenges and reforms, 1990 present. As we entered the 21st century, Social Security once again faced financial challenges. The biggest issue? America's aging population. With declining birth rates and longer life expectancies, more people are receiving Social Security benefits while fewer workers are paying into the system. Without reform, the Social Security Trust Fund is projected to be depleted by 2034. If that happens, benefits will need to be cut by approximately 20%. What are the possible solutions? Some policymakers propose raising the payroll tax cap so that higher income earners pay more into the system. Others suggest gradually increasing the retirement age again. There are also proposals to privatize Social Security, allowing workers to invest their contributions in private accounts. The debate over Social Security's future remains one of the most contentious in American politics. The future of Social Security, 2050 and beyond. As we look ahead, one question looms large. What will Social Security look like in the coming decades? If no changes are made, benefits could be reduced. But if the right reforms are implemented, Social Security could remain sustainable for future generations. International comparisons provide insight. Some countries, like Sweden, have reformed their Social Security systems to automatically adjust based on demographic trends. Others, like Singapore, use a system of mandatory personal savings accounts. The United States must decide, will we preserve Social Security as it is, or will we adopt a new model for retirement security? One thing is certain, Social Security's story is still being written. For nearly a century, Social Security has provided financial stability to millions of Americans. It has lifted generations out of poverty, supported the disabled, and given retirees a sense of security. But it faces an uncertain future. Whether Social Security survives and thrives will depend on the choices we make today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the history of Social Security. If you found this documentary insightful, please like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth explorations of the world's most important policies and programs. The past of Social Security is rich, its present is complex, but its future is still in our hands. Social Security has played a crucial role in American life for nearly 90 years, providing financial security for retirees, disabled individuals, and families. While challenges exist, ongoing reforms and discussions will shape its future. Stay informed. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts.